Hey, what's up? I'm hot, and I get lots of women, so that makes me a Chad. But girls sometimes call me Chatty. As a Chad, I don't even take dumps. I know anything touching my butt is gay. As a Chad, I have herpes, gonorrhea, and HPV. Just a testament to how many women I get. I also have AIDS, because I thought they were a woman. I'll be honest, it's almost challenging being this hot. Those darn Chads. Always taking the girls from us regular guys. Sure, I have no job, career, house, or goals in life, but my celibacy is involuntary. What's up everybody, Hunter Avalone here, and welcome to a brand new video. Today I'm talking about a bit of a more serious topic. Now, obviously I am not a psychologist, so this is only my opinion. However, like always, I have the right opinion. Today, I'm talking about incels, a group of men who blame their status as virgins on society and women. But it goes a lot further than that, and I think far too often, we're too quick to just mock incels instead of actually trying to understand the reasoning behind some of their more radical beliefs. In this video, I plan on breaking down exactly what an incel is, how an incel is made, and the real-world problems which can lead to inceldom. So grab your chastity belts and let's begin. The truth about incels. Chapter 1. What is an incel? You've probably seen them or heard of them before. Incel stands for involuntary celibate, an online subculture who define themselves as unable to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one, a state they describe as inceldom.
It's involuntarily celibate. It's just something you are. Volcel is voluntarily celibate. Incel is involuntarily celibate, meaning you've tried many times and failed.
Incels claim not to be a movement or a community, but rather a mindset. Therefore, inceldom is not homogeneous. Some incels are lonely virgins searching for friends, some are trolls trying to be inflammatory, and then there are those who blatantly hate women. Although not all incels hate women, most incels will eventually reach a version of that point. Incels are not all the same. They're in different places with different reasons for finding inceldom, but they are on the same road, leading to the same destination: anger, loneliness, and a deep, bitter hatred towards women. Incels speak in a unique vocabulary, and if some boomer or just a normal person stumbled upon an incel forum, they'd probably be extremely confused. Although there's way more vocabulary than I care to read, I can explain some of the more common definitions. First, there's Chad. Chad is the anti-incel. A Chad is a man who is sexually successful, who is charismatic and handsome and clever. Incels have an odd relationship with Chads, simultaneously loathing and worshipping them. Their theory is that even women who eventually marry betas will still want Chads, and will almost invariably cheat on or cuck their husband with Chad. Next, there's femoid. This term is used to describe women, usually female humanoid organism, sometimes female android. Regardless, it's used to indicate that women aren't fully human and are either subhuman or other. Hypergamy, a term borrowed from biology used to describe the phenomenon of females mating with males of higher status. Incels apply it to humans, arguing that women attempt to find men who are higher status than themselves. This gives birth to what they call the 80-20 rule, that the top 20% of men are being competed for by the top 80% of women, and the bottom 80% of men are competing for the bottom 20% of women. This goes along with another common belief among incels that your jawbone determines life outcomes. A common description of a Chad is a handsome man with a good jawbone. Next, there's KTHHFV, kissless, touchless, hugless, handholdless, friendless virgin. Each of these is a status marker in the incel community. As with many other statuses, it is simultaneously a mark of sadness and loneliness, whilst also indicating purity and authenticity as an incel. Finally, there's Stacy, used to denote a woman who has sex with a lot of men, usually chads, and is stereotypically airheaded, unintelligent, beautiful, and promiscuous. There are countless others, but you get the gist of it. Incel ideology is built around misogyny, self-pity, and deep emotional pain. Incels often push for more traditional roles, idealizing the past when women were less liberated and promiscuous.
So you think that promiscuity is the problem, and if people were more monogamous and more withholding, that would sort of fix society?
Yeah, I suppose people were more traditionalist.
Incels long after a time in which women were expected and obligated to essentially have sex with them. They long for a time in which women were required to stay bound to a man for life, regardless of how she felt about it. With incels, it's not only about sex, but it's about control. Chapter 2. What makes an incel? You probably think some of this incel ideology is crazy and maybe even a bit shocking. Their definitions and beliefs are sad and depressing, but try to realize there are millions of men who truly believe these things. Next, imagine holding these beliefs and also isolating yourself, being in a place where you have very little social interaction outside of your computer on an incel forum.
Joey is 23 years old. He doesn't have a job, he's not in school. On a given day, he may not get up from his chair, where he sits sometimes for 2 days straight, smoking cigarettes and running chat rooms.
This is one of the reasons why incels usually begin by feeling lonely, depressed, worthless, and rejected, and eventually spiral into projecting emotional pain with bitterness and hatred towards women. Incels begin as the nice guys. Not actual friendly guys, but guys who believe they need to worship women in order to attract one. Most incels were loyal and dedicated nice guys who once hopelessly fell in love with girls they know don't have any chances. They tried everything to prove their love, but end up getting humiliated and mocked. I was so devastated. She called me ugly right to my face. Unfortunately, this nice guy's approach leads to constant rejection.
You know, it's constant years of rejection, no matter who the person was, constant years of rejection in other aspects of my life. It did kind of push me towards more, I suppose, radical beliefs, but I suppose they're only like radical, but they're more just old beliefs, really.
A common issue with nice guys and full-blown incels is their belief, whether or not it's conscious, that women owe them something. This entitled mentality becomes more and more apparent the more a man embraces inceldom. Someone writes on a popular incel forum, "There's absolutely no reason to be kind to a woman who doesn't want to fuck you. Why would I help someone who sees me as an inferior, ugly creature? If you give your seat to a foid, she's still gonna see you as ugly. If she borrows money from you, she's gonna spend it with her Chad boyfriend. If you hold the door open for her, she's not gonna thank you. She's just gonna rush out of the building to make out with her boyfriend in front of you." That actually happened to me once. It doesn't matter to women if we're gentle with them. They're so superficial that they can't see past our looks. They will never give us a chance, no matter how well we treat them. The truth is, women don't owe you anything. Your kindness does not suddenly mean you're owed a chance. Sure, maybe a girl giving you a chance would be nice and polite, but the idea that it's owed to you upon the act of your good deed is entitlement and will lead to a life of hurt and rejection. Stop living for women and start living for your own goals and ambitions. That attitude alone can greatly benefit you. Now mix in a life of rejection, a life of feeling gypped of something owed to you, and mix that with a constant supply of ideas reaffirming that you aren't the problem, you're the victim. This isn't your fault, it's women's. This obviously leads to deep bitterness, hatred, and resentment towards women. One of the most popular incel forums is incel.co. A recent paper by 6 scholars studied a random selection of threads on the forum, finding that more than 50% used overtly misogynistic language. While 10% of users were responsible for most of the hateful content directed at women and other minority groups, about half of the users in our database posted hateful messages at one time or another. This comes as no shock to me. I went on this forum and it didn't take long until I stumbled upon quite a few angry posts. Posts calling for the West to fall and become poor because we've let women run loose and disrespect men. Comments calling for Sharia law so we can stone women, and posts calling a woman who reported domestic abuse a repugnant whore. Since incels always come from a place of rejection, they replace this deep-seated sadness and loneliness with anger and hatred. An ex-incel described how the forums fueled a hatred towards women. This ex-incel got dumped by the only girl he'd managed to date just as he was starting high school. He fell into a funk, a dark period during which he came across incel forums. The more time he spent there, the more his feelings towards women darkened. I hated them, he said. I wholeheartedly hated them. Initially, the ex-incel saw the forums as a lifeline, a place to find other people who understood his pain. But as time went on, he noticed that the angry hopelessness of the other incels was making his depression worse, not better. He was staying up late at night, seething, and not sleeping. Incels are essentially just male versions of feminists. Instead of taking responsibility and looking inward, they blame the opposite sex and society for their issues. Thankfully, this ex-incel managed to pull away from the incel forums, but others, not so much. In 2014, near the University of California, a man named Elliot Rodger killed 6 people and injured 14 others. A video he uploaded prior to his attack explained that he wanted to punish women for rejecting him and sexually active men because he envied them. In 2018, a Toronto man drove his van into pedestrians, killing 10 and injuring 16. After the attack, a Facebook post was uncovered, revealing the attacker to be a self-described incel, even posting that the incel rebellion has already begun before beginning his killing spree. This is what happens when incel ideology is taken to the furthest extreme. Thankfully, many incels don't manifest their feelings in this abhorrent way. Regardless, when incel ideology isn't being used to invoke terror attacks or harm others, it's being used to invoke bitterness, misogyny, and harm to the well-being of incels themselves. There's nothing positive these people promote. It's just anger, negativity, and self-loathing. Chapter 3: The Truth About Incels. Incels at their core are depressed, usually hurt in some way, and angry at the world. This doesn't justify their actions, but it's for everyone's best interest that we understand their misunderstandings. Like I explained before, many incels believe they've found a place where people can relate, but it only contributes to self-loathing and depression. Incels want to be out of this hell they're in, yet they only surround themselves with people who enforce their angry, backwards, and sad ideas. Here's the thing, I actually understand where incels are coming from. Now before you get your pitchforks, let me explain. Our society has pushed men into a box. It's a narrow box that men are oftentimes forced to conform to. This box represents the expectations we place on men. How many times have you met a man who thought that in order to prove his manliness, he couldn't show emotion, or that reaching out for help and being vulnerable was a sign of weakness, or that in order to really prove the fact that this guy is a man, he refuses to depend on anyone and pretends he has no needs, suffering in silence. Men have been conditioned to believe that in order to be a real man, you have to be this way. This is hurting men, even though most of the time, we don't realize it. According to American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men. White males accounted for 69.67% of suicide deaths in 2017. Because oftentimes it makes you a quote, bitch for refusing to depend on anyone, that can harm men forming healthy relationships and friendships. Studies by Judy Chu and Nebo Wei document the process by which boys are convinced to abandon their close friendships in order to better conform to the expectations of emotional toughness. In fact, our generation in general is getting more and more lonely. According to a recent study conducted by Cigna, Gen Z is significantly more likely than any other age group to say that they experience feelings that are associated with loneliness. 68% said they feel like no one really knows them well. Men specifically are also having less sex. According to new data from the General Social Survey, researchers surveyed 2,348 adults and found that 28% of men under 30 had gone a year or more without sex. That's nearly triple the amount of dudes who reported year-long dry spells back in 2008. Another negative trait associated with being a real man is your ability to attract women. This is unhealthy for obvious reasons. Your self-worth should not be built around your ability to attract other people. Take the negative social conditioning with an epidemic of loneliness and sexless men, and what do you get? Well, you get a lot of unhappy, miserable guys. Most guys just try and deal with it. Some guys become incels, blaming the way they feel on women, creating conspiracies and generalizations about how women think, and indulging in self-loathing to the fullest extent. The misogyny, anger, and hate is wrong and unjustifiable, but the social conditioning placed on men plays a direct role in this behavior. Incels need to understand that it isn't women's fault they're lonely. It isn't their right that women sleep with them. The resentment and hate expressed towards women is just a scapegoat. Incels, in reality, are looking for someone to blame. The truth is, incels need to change their attitude. First, realize that they've been conditioned to base their self-worth on attracting women while also failing to form friendships. Secondly, understand that women aren't conspiring against you, and all women aren't shallow bimbos. Maybe the key to getting out of your self-described miserable lives isn't trying to change women, but try changing your outlook. Try adjusting your attitude. Start living for yourself instead of living for women's approval. This attitude will help you. After all, being an incel is a mindset.